It's lunchtime here in Arizona. It's late evening if you're in the Greenwich Mean Time Zone, or it is 10 p.m. in the Moscow Standard Time Zone. And you may be interested in this no matter which of those time zones you're in, because that's right. We're going to be talking about the Belarus Premier League again. We have Jonathan Hibberd, who is the English language Isloch Twitter account that he's been doing on the Belarus Premier League here since the beginning of the season. Jonathan is now here for the fourth time, and we're going to really get in depth on the Belarus Premier League in a way that maybe we haven't before, because we're going to start getting into the matchups that are coming up here in what will be match week 6, correct?
Yeah. So we're amazingly we've gone through 5 rounds of games, and they're still playing. They probably shouldn't be, but it's it's the biggest football story in the world at the moment. Actually, before we go on, the time zones thing, it kind of reminded me of when I used to live in Kiev, and they used to have the Russian League on at Sunday lunchtimes. And I switched on the game one Sunday lunchtime, and it was dark. And I was like, how can it be dark if it's a live game? But that's because the home team was Luch Vladivostok in the Russian Far East, which is next to Japan, which is in a completely different time zone to Moscow. So it just kind of reminded me of that. This week, there was, I don't remember which day it was, 2 or 3 days ago, the World Health Organization gave out a strongly worded statement to Belarus that they should really not be playing sports anymore. It doesn't seem to have had any effect at all, so that the games are still going ahead. But there was an article, I believe it was covered actually in a Scottish local paper. So a player, Darko Bodal, who used to play, I think, for Dundee United or one of the teams in Scotland. And he was interviewed briefly saying that he's quite unhappy about the fact they're still playing. In his situation, he's a Croatian. His wife and child are in Amsterdam, and none of them can travel. So some of the players are having, a degree of personal distress from this now, which I think is probably going to build up a bit.
With the number of international players that you had mentioned, I'm really surprised this hasn't become more of an issue earlier. So I guess there's 2 questions I would have, and I don't want us to get bogged down in this, because like we always talk about beforehand, this is a football show. We're just kind of addressing this stuff because it need be addressed, of course. But my question is, so in Belarus, is it kind of like sports or an exception thing that's going on, and the rest of the country is in lockdown, or is it just business as usual?
No, it's that the country is very much not in lockdown, and that the president very much is still in denial about coronavirus, or I don't know really how he wants to play it. But what is interesting, and in fact Bodal said this in his interview, but I've also heard it from a friend of mine who lives in Minsk, and they kind of said, well, it's not officially in lockdown. Officially, almost nothing's been done, but unofficially, people get it. And it's kind of what we were talking about the game the other week, people actually practicing social distancing for themselves and things. So people are, to an extent, trying to just figure it out themselves. And at the games now, you're only really hearing diehard ultras turning up to matches. The stadiums are very, very empty still. So but there's most definitely not a lockdown. Exactly. It's just potentially quite a sad situation, and it's one we have to keep an eye on. As it happens, it's going ahead. I'm a bit surprised, actually, that UEFA haven't really said anything. I know FIFA Pro, the players' union, International Players' Union, have said it's mad that they're still playing. The show goes on.
I would think that it's kind of at a point where if they were going to stop playing, it would have already happened. So, I mean, it seems like they're going to go on. The one question that I should ask, and I don't even know if I want to ask this question because it's so hard to get any accurate information, but are numbers showing that things are worse in Belarus than they are in other places? Or
from what I've seen, yes. So Ukraine, for example, has been in a very, very firm lockdown for at least 2-3 weeks. And I did hear some statistics that were claiming that Ukraine, which is about 5 times bigger than Belarus, had about the same number of cases. If that were true, that's really not good at all. But we don't really know. I mean, as I mentioned in the first pod we did, it's a closed country. It's a dictatorship. Lukashenko has been called Europe's last dictator. So I don't know if we can really trust information that comes from there anyway. But I think we should get onto the sport.
Yeah, let's move on. And now that I think we've addressed all of the questions that need be addressed, and like you said, let's move forward to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slight thing. They're talking about restarting the Bundesliga now in 3 weeks' time. Actually, I was quite heartened by a poll that I did saying to people, are you going to abandon watching the Belarus League if the Bundesliga restarts? And most of the people that are following me said, no, they're going to stick with it. So I was pleased about that. Yeah, so first up was Energetic against Gorodea. So Energetic's early form is abandoning them now. And Gorodea now look like the up-and-coming side, which we didn't see coming earlier. I haven't got too much more to say about that game. Moving on, I suppose one of the really interesting games of the weekend was Dynamo Minsk against Neman Grodno.
Right. Yeah.
I wanted to just chuck in, for no reason at all, really, another anecdote about Neman Grodno. Somebody put up a photo on Twitter recently that they, at one of their matches, they put up a giant replica of the 1918 Declaration of Belarusian Independence. So they're kind of very much that sort of patriotic Western side of the country. And the kind of one of the few kind of US or North American connections to this is that the government in exile of the Belarusian 1918 Republic is still going, actually. And the president is in Canada, I believe. So that's just kind of odd thing I was just going to chuck in. But Dynamo Minsk, all change at Dynamo Minsk. That was the last game of Sergei Gurenko, who'd been manager of the club for 3 years. So it's a bit strange. He actually wins that game 2-0, but then gets fired. But actually, apparently...
That is a little bit unusual. Usually you only see a guy get sacked after a loss.
Yeah, but apparently it had already been arranged after the previous game.
That makes sense.
So they'd sat down with the owners and didn't go public, basically. So he's gone. They've brought in Leonid Kuchuk, who is native of Belarus, but he's spent a lot of time managing in Russia, in the Russian league, and having a fair bit of success there. So that's probably a really, really good appointment for Dynamo. Yeah, so it's another 2-0 win at home for them. And the second goal was one of these curious ones. It was the result of Neman sending their goalkeeper up in the last minute in the hope of maybe getting something. Dynamo nicked a second goal, basically into an open goal from distance. And I was just thinking, it's amazing actually how rarely that happens. Usually the keeper will go up, but they'll somehow get away with it. And this time they didn't. So moving on.
I'm looking here and just to kind of bring up what we're looking at as we go through these games. The table right now, I see that after this set of games, 1st through 14th is only separated by 5 points. So things are as tight as they get here through 5 matches.
Yeah, and there is no team that's unbeaten. I mean, isn't that amazing? After only 5 games, there's no standout.
There's nobody with less than 2 results that were to win. Everybody has at least one draw and 1 loss. nobody's won more than 3 out of 5, I guess I should say.
Yeah. So then that kind of clashed the relegation 6-pointer that we had been talking about last week. That ended in a draw. Belshina got, and this is where I'm going to start talking about the officiating. There's been a lot of complaints about the officials in the league and some of the decisions that they're giving. And in this game, Belshina took the lead with a penalty fairly late on, and then Smolovici equalised with an even later penalty. But I must say there was the finishing across the league this last week was really, really wasteful. So I don't know what it is, but I mean, Barte's game was probably the standout one. They absolutely battered Torpedo, about 16 shots, and couldn't score. So it's just been a very, very bad week in front of goal. Yeah, obviously Belshina could have really, really done with that win. I suppose Smolovici could have done as well. So we didn't learn too much from that game, except that they both fall a bit further behind.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really... I mean, as early in the season as it is, I think it's probably going to be tough, like you said, for either one of those teams. They're starting to be that separation at the bottom of the table more so than at the top of the table, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, that's true, because otherwise, it's very difficult to see who's in form, who's the front runners and things. But yeah, that's the most settled. But of course, it doesn't, even if those two go down, that doesn't quite settle the relegation issue, because the third from bottom team plays off against the third place team in the second tier. So at the moment, that would be Neyman, who would hope to do a bit better, I think. It's a really odd feature of football in some countries, although we do have it in Scotland now. For a long time, Scotland was there was promotion and relegation between the professional leagues, but they didn't have a pyramid. So if you were in non-league, you were waiting for a professional team to go bust, maybe, and that would be your way into the league. And they finally changed that. That's 3 or 4 years ago. And in Scotland, as far as I know, it's tended to favour the kind of incumbent league team rather than the kind of non-league team. But I don't know how it works out in Belarus.
That just kind of caught me by surprise, Coach. So then basically, just to kind of put it into like Premier League standards, what you would have based on current tables is instead of Villa getting relegated, they would be playing Fulham to see who's...
Yeah, that's right. What it does mean in the Belarus case is you've got much, much bigger clubs kind of brought into the relegation picture, potentially. So, Shakhtar against Slutsk. I don't want to give Slutsk too much free publicity because they get plenty anyway. They won this game 2-1. Shakhtar is a curious feature. They might remind you in name of Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine. And
familiar with them.
Yeah, and the word Shakhtar or Shakhtar means miner. Okay, so it usually means that it's a miners team, basically.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I read in the case, I know Shakhtar have got these sort of bright yellow shirts, and Shakhtar Donetsk is orange, and I know that the reason for that in Donetsk's case is that the bright colour is supposed to symbolise the daylight when you come out of the mine. So I just thought I'd throw that in as a piece of trivia.
That's actually something that I think is more common than folks would think. I mean, it's not any different than the Met Police, for instance.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a thing from communist times of all the teams having ties to, it could be the police or the army or whatever.
That's something I see a lot with African teams, too, is that, you'll have like it would be the town mining team or something like that, where it would just be, to kind of tie it to a recent interview, that it was like Jimmy Bell, who is Accrington coach right now, he was talking about how when he used to work at a meat packing plant, and at the end of the day, they'd all go out behind the meat packing plant and have a a five-a-side game. And I think that's how a lot of those clubs kind of got started back in the 1800s.
Yeah, and it makes me think of when you do those hard kind of industrial jobs, then the sport, the kind of thing that you're able to do with your free time at the weekend becomes really important. And there's a famous, I think it was a Barnsley manager who took his players down the coal mine to show the players how hard they work and to say, look, this is why on a Saturday you need to put a shift in. But Shakhtar fans are really unhappy at the moment. There's a new manager of the club. It's not going well. And they were particularly upset. Sergei Matveychik, who's a very, very long-time servant of the club, so best defender who's played for the club since 2013, has been forced to train with the reserves. So they seem really, really unhappy about that. A shirt with his name on it was put onto the terraces in protest. So, yeah, Shakhtar is not really a happy camp at the moment, by all accounts.
Yeah, I think that sometimes when a player like that has been a fixture at the team, that a lot of times that player is going to be more popular with the fans than the manager would be.
Yeah, exactly. So there are big PR issues there, I think. Moving on was, of course, Isloch beating Slavia 2-1.
Back on the right track.
Exactly, and I've really got a lot of admiration for Zhukovsky, the young coach that we were talking about. So, one of my friends who's watching the matches says that he seems to make tactical moves in games that are the opposite of what you'd expect. And we'd been talking, the first podcast we had, I talked about the Isloch sort of front three and how there were basically four attacking players, and he was sort of bringing in any three of those. But this week he decided to find space for all four of them, which seemed to work well. As I said, all of those players have got goals in them, and they all know each other. You can really see that. There's a great understanding between the front players. But they were having problems at the back. They were really having pace issues. And what Zhukovsky did was to get Sveber, who's actually a midfielder, but just a much younger player, and put basically a midfielder between the two centre-backs as a back three. And that was just really interesting. It's almost like Belarusian total football,
So they were playing a 3-2-3-1?
Yeah. And so basically, he found a system just to kind of get all of those people in he needed to address the pace issues. It worked this time, but, I can't say it will keep working to play a defender at centre-back. Sorry, to play a midfielder at centre-back. But again, it's this officiating, this refereeing that was really the issue.
Is refereeing always the issue?
A lot of people were unhappy this time round, and we said how much we love there being no VAR. But this is the flip side to it. So one of these four attacking players, Dima Komarovsky, who's been with Isloch quite a while, and he really showed how much of an impact player he is. First of all, his gamesmanship won the penalty for the first goal. So, he went down rather easily.
Simulation.
But on the other hand, he's got a lethal right boot on him, so scored a rasping penalty.
As opposed to Pavel Savitsky, who has a lethal left foot. Just add that in there.
There we go.
If you're not following Pavel's left foot on Twitter, make sure you are.
Definitely. He's been putting up some great stuff, hasn't he? I know he put up an 11 of the African players in the league.
His graphics and things are awesome. He really is a driving force behind a lot of the statistical information that's coming out on Twitter.
Yeah, so that was good. And apparently what I've heard is that there is a quota on foreign players. So a certain number of the players on the pitch at any one time for your team have to be Belarusians, right? So that means if you are going to have a foreign player, they've got to be an impact player, basically.
That's true in the Russian league itself. Also, is that there's a lot of leagues that have limits on foreign players. I mean, even in the MLS, there's limits on at least how much you can spend on foreign players.
Yeah, so the foreign players in Belarus, perhaps they're loosely analogous to the marquee players in MLS.
Right,
just a bit less illustrious, I would say. But yeah, so Komorowski comes up with the penalty, scores the penalty, then puts in a brilliant swerving cross for the header from a corner as well. So that puts them 2-0 up, and that just leaves Slavia with a bit too much to do. They did get a goal back, but so they'll obviously be disappointed. Only one really standout goal of the week was the Sedko goal for Rue Brest against FC Minsk. FC Minsk have faded since the early games. So basically, ball over the top. The Rue Brest guy. Yeah, he hits it on the volley from about a good 25 yards out. And that was, I think, the moment of the weekend in terms of the quality of the goals, because otherwise we were quite impoverished.
Well, with the whole match week, I don't see that there were any clubs that scored more than 2 goals. We had a bunch of 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 1-1. Nobody got 3 on the board for the whole week. So I mean, it was a little just lack of goals in general, and then like you said, like that Bate Torpedo game, that was 0-0, and you said there were some wasted chances in that. So it might have been a hangover for Easter dinner.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to
tractors.
I'm going to skip talking about the Bate Torpedo game, because although I said it was the standout game of the weekend, it wasn't very good. All of the action really happened at Vitebsk, or if you're being fussy, it's actually Vitsebsk. Against Dynamo Brest, who, we thought maybe Dynamo Brest are that kind of quality team that's going to kind of get into cruise control. They already had Milevsky, the old Dynamo Kiev player, and brought in another one, Yevhen Kacheridi, who played a lot of games for Dynamo Kiev, played a lot of international matches for Ukraine. Looks a really good signing, but it's not going well. And Kacheridi, there's interesting things with him. He's been known for quite a long time for having quite a fiery temper, basically. And his career has really, really gone downhill. So last couple of seasons, he's been at PAOK Salonika in Greece, and he possibly went to play for them because he's actually from the Ukrainian Greek community. So there's a community of Greeks that settled in Ukraine like hundreds of years ago, basically, but still kept their identity. And so possibly that was the draw of him going to Greece, but he didn't do well. He only made about 6 league appearances for PAOK. So it seems to me he's come to Dynamo Brest at a bit of a loose end in his career, and it really hasn't gone well. In that game, Dynamo ended with 9 men. So they had the first player sent off in the 70-something minute for a second yellow. And then, I don't know if you've ever seen
I know I've never seen a game that ended with this team finished with 9 men and it was a good game for them.
No, exactly. But I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm probably showing my age here, David Beckham's red card against Argentina in 1998 for a very, very...
I was a senior in high school then, so I'm right there with you.
Excellent. Yeah, so a very, very petulant kick that didn't really hurt the other guy. But so I think Kacheridi basically, he came out with something of that vintage, basically a little kick against a guy.
Did you ever see the Dennis Rodman kicking the cameraman at the basketball game?
Oh, I haven't, but I'll have to Google it.
Just Google Dennis Rodman kicks cameraman, and you'll enjoy that one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're expecting something like the Cantona Kung Fu kick, it just wasn't in that league, I'm afraid. So it's just a small petulant kick. It hasn't hurt the guy, but the letter of the law is you kick a player like that, you have to go. Fair enough. He couldn't have any complaints, but he clearly did. And we're told that he attacked the referee in the tunnel after the game. So initially, Cacciaridi was...
that sounds more like Dennis Rodman there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so the best bits weren't on camera, but it looked as if he'd been fired by the club.
Oh, wow.
And then we were told he hadn't been fired from the club. I mean, perhaps they just kind of let the dust settle over the weekend and thought, this is still a good player. You don't necessarily want to just kind of give away your good players.
Pretty inept thing to unfire a guy. The only situation that I can think of like that in the U.S. was when the Cincinnati Bengals fired Marvin Lewis as their head coach, and then about a week later they said, "Oh, never mind," and brought him back for another year. And if you know anything about the Cincinnati Bengals, the last time they won a playoff game was 1988. So
wow. Yeah, but when they do, it's going to be amazing, right? So that's what we were talking about last week. So, yeah, Cacciaridi has been brought back, but he's been fined half his salary. I don't know how long that's going to go on. And, his salary is not high by footballer standards, but it's pretty decent for you or I. So he's definitely going to be missing out. But I think he's really looking at the abyss in terms of his career, because he should have 3 or 4 more good years in him, but it's just kind of losing his head. So
yeah, because he's going to not just devalue himself for the year that he's out half the salary, that every contract he gets from here on out is going to be less.
Yeah. What else to bring up? The second tier has started now, and I'm just going to talk really briefly about that, if I may.
Yeah, let's wrap up with that, and then tell us what's going on in the second tier, because you said there's the top 2 teams get promoted, and then the third place team plays the third worst team in the top division. And
that's right. Yeah, so I'm only going to talk about 2 teams this week, I think, which are Gomel. So Gomel have a bit of history. Gomel have won the Belarusian league in the past. So they are going to be, I think, a team to watch, sort of sleeping giants as we were. They didn't get off to a good start. They drew 0-0, but there's been wonderful pictures going around of self-isolation. Well, if you live in one of the apartments that has a fantastic view of the pitch of Gomel FC's stadium, then you're pretty much set up for the self-isolation thing, I think. And the other one I wanted to mention, honourable mention really, just because of what they've been doing, is Minsk-based side Krumkachi. And the main thing with them is just the way that they have been doing the social media. They've been really, really great. They've actually been televising pre-season games on YouTube and kind of really making a big effort to get people interested in the league.
We can't even get every Phoenix Rising preseason game on YouTube. So.
Yeah, so perhaps you should get this guy in, because they're doing a great job, I think. So best of luck to them. I've latched onto a team called Orsha, purely because their badge has got a sort of Portsmouth FC type thing going on, which I quite like. So for my Pompey sympathies. So I think that wraps us up for the week. In terms of the games, I was struggling to really pick out one standout game. I mean, we don't really know who are the good teams, who are the bad teams. It's so open.
Well, the one that jumped out at me that's coming up here is, I'm going to say this wrong, but Korodia versus Bate, because Korodia, they right now, they're on the best form in the league. They've won 3 in a row. They lost their first 2. They've come back. They've won 3 in a row. Bate, they also lost their first two. They had 2 wins and a draw. So, I mean, I think these are, if you look at current form, other than the top 2 teams, these are the 2 teams in best form. And I think that the winner of this game should probably find themselves in the top 3, because you have Vitebsk is playing Isloch, so that's certainly a match that they could lose. And then Sluts, I mean, they've been overachieving. They're probably going to beat Belarusian, I would assume.
I hope so. Did I say that? Yeah.
And the Torpedo, Rubrus, I mean, maybe Rubrus Torpedo. That's another interesting one. I would say those would be my 2 to watch. Would be Rubrus Torpedo and Gorodiev versus Bate.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope Dynamo Brest against Shakhtar, 2 clubs with big off the field issues, so there might be a lot of intrigues with that one. Just hoping it's another interesting round of games.
I think that no matter where it's at and who's playing, football is always an interesting round of games. And at the end of the day, that's the reason that we're doing this series, is because whether we agree with it or not, if there's football being played, there's stories to tell about football, and we're here, we want to tell those stories.
Absolutely.
Well, Jonathan, it's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to doing it again here for as long as they keep playing for, and it seems like that's going to be a while.
Yeah, there's more football. Turkmenistan has restarted. But the strange thing with that is it seems that nobody ever knows when the games are going to be. So games are changed last minute on a whim. So let's hope Belarus keeps going as a bit easier to keep track of.
So watching a game in Turkmenistan is like showing up to a Guns N' Roses concert back in the 90s.
Yeah, probably is.
Start, you know?
I think, in Turkmenistan, they're more interested in horses by the sounds of it. So all the sports channels show that.
All right. I will talk with you soon. Have a great week, Jonathan.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.